This could be a manager perk, couldn't it?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want it.
Well,
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our 4:30 strategic planning meeting. There being a quorum of council, call the City Council Strategic Planning Meeting of November 8th, 2022 to order. At this time, I will recognize Lisa Strickland to present the fiscal year 2024 budget schedule.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Glad to be here to kick off another year of budget. Seems early, I know, because we don't adopt until the spring, but it takes a long time to put this big old budget together. The format's going to be similar to last year. That seemed to work, and it seemed to,
That's
you
one
know,
that we've got. So that's the model.
all coordinate pretty well among staff and among council. You know, of course, we'll take any kind of feedback or, you know, comments that you guys can offer, but typically the city does what they consider a base budget. So we start out with the same budget that we had last year, and then we build on that. The departments introduce new programs or new needs above and beyond that base budget, and that's what we'll bring to you for approval. As you can see on the schedule, all of the departments have split up the strategic meetings between now and April, and they'll bring all of those needs to you for your feedback, questions, prioritization. You know, any feedback that you can offer during the process will help Brian in prioritizing his recommendations. Once we have all of the council meetings done, then we meet for the April 24th. That's the budget workshop presentation. That's where we present the manager's recommended budget. So at that point, we've already met with the departments. We've assembled, you know, a recommended balanced budget. We'll call for a public hearing in May and hold the public hearing in June and adopt the budget at that June council meeting. Any comments or questions on that schedule?
Anybody have any questions or comments for Lisa?
No.
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. Okay, this time I'll recognize Lisa Strickland once again to present the state sales tax distribution discussion.
Okay. State sales tax, as you know, is collected by retailers all around the state and is sent in to the Department of Revenue, and then it's distributed back to the counties and municipalities. So what I'm going to talk about is how the distribution back to the counties and municipalities is determined. So every April, the county is the one that gets to decide the method. They have the opportunity to change the method. There's only one of two ways that the money can be distributed. It's either by population, percent of population, or the ad valorem distribution, which is based on the levy, which the levy is simply just the tax that we charge our residents here. So we add up all the tax bills, and that's our total levy. So we report that back to the state, to the Department of Revenue, on a TR2 report. We add up all those amounts, send them in, and then they use those values to determine the percent for each city and the county in each jurisdiction across the state. Here's a comparison. There's a handout, I think, that Bridget may have passed out, maybe easier to see than that. But this just compares the two different methods. So if it was done for fiscal year 23 by population, the city would get 8.59878, it's in that dark blue line, or we currently get the ad valorem distribution, which is 8.57582. It's almost the same. The county has elected the ad valorem levy for as long as I've been working here, and I can't see why they would change, because if you look at how their election would affect them, if they selected the population, their share of the distribution would go down to 59%, where now it's 80%. So I don't see them changing anytime soon because, of course, they're going to take the election that's going to benefit them the most. This is the sales tax history, the revenue for Monroe. So over time, you can see how our actual revenue in that second to last column has grown year over year, some years more than others. You can also see how our percent of the total distribution has changed over time. I guess important to note, it jumped up in 2020. That's when we raised taxes by 3 cents to afford the police station. So that increased our share because our levy went up because we collected more taxes. So then in 2022, that was the first year of the revenue neutral rate. So we lost a little bit of footing. But then we lost even more in 2023. And I was like, well, why? Because the revenue neutral rate went into effect in 2022. You know, when I looked at this, all I could find was that Waxhaw and Indian Trail grew so much that their percentages just really went up considerably. And you can see this, I've outlined everybody's percent over the last 4 years on this slide. And you can see between the blue, the 2022, if you look at Indian Trail, they had a levy of 7.6 million. It went up to over 10 million in the purple in 2023. And the same with Waxhaw. I was like, wow, they really grew too, from 8 million to 11.7 million. So I think just their growth drove their values up so high, and it just took away from our share because it just reallocates it. But that is basically how it works. So, the more value you have in your levy, the more share you'll get of the distribution. Any questions or?
Anybody have any questions for Lisa?
So Waxhaw has a higher percentage of distribution than Indian Trail. Is that right? I looked at it correctly. Yep.
Yeah, Waxhaw's what, 3.18 and Indian Trail's 2.9?
Wow.
Man, it's interesting the way it falls out, and we really don't know how it'll fall out until it does. We submit the TR2s in January, and then we find out our percentages. Usually we'll call and get them when we're assembling the budget in April, and that'll be the distribution percentage amount that'll start in July.
And if they use the population formula, those numbers would probably be even more for the individual municipalities.
Yeah, they would.
Because this is all ad valorem numbers.
Yeah, because the county would lose a big chunk of theirs. So we kind of stayed the same, which was kind of odd. I wouldn't have thought it would be that similar, between the two methods for us. But yeah, a lot of the other municipalities would win big, especially Indian Trail.
Hopefully that can change, or will change in years to come if what we've approved bills out and our population grows, and our percentages will rise at that point. With their situation, especially on the sewage side, they're not going to have a lot of growth in Indian Trail anytime soon.
Yeah, they're stuck.
So,
Or Waxhaw.
right, or Waxhaw. So hopefully that'll all come back in our favor.
Yes, we can hope.
Anything else for Lisa? All right. Thank you. Thank you for what you and your staff do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This time I will recognize Chief Fowler to present the Fire Station 6 location study. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and council, and manager. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you this afternoon. You may recall that we recently, actually back in 2021, we identified the need to bring in an outside consultant to do a fire station location study. And really the reason for that was we had identified a need locally. You know, we felt like we had the need up in that northwest area where we're planning for Station 6. You know, we had done our own GIS modeling with our city GIS department. They certainly did a lot of work to help us with that. We also, you know, through our accreditation process, through our ISO, last ISO survey, we realized we had that need up in that area. But we just wanted to bring in an outside firm just to make sure we're doing the right things, to make sure that we're doing the right things and moving forward, not just with Station 6, but to also look at our other station locations. So what I'd like to do this afternoon is just give you an overview of that study, just the key recommendations. I have placed a copy of it there at your desk, so certainly that's something you can have and take with you and look at in detail, anything that you want to look at. There's a lot of information in there, and time just won't permit to go through everything that's in that study. So I just like to hit the key recommendations there. We did hire with a firm, North Carolina Fire Chiefs Consulting Group. They are the official fire consulting group for the league, for the North Carolina League. And they're very well known, very well respected group. It's led by a gentleman, he's a retired chief, Greg Grayson, who was previously the fire chief in Asheville and then retired as the fire chief in Greensboro. And he has a very high qualified team that's working with him to conduct these studies. So the study included several things. It actually included more than just the station locations. But basically there were four key areas. One, they did using GIS, they did a GIS analysis of the city and our current stations, its current locations, just to see, are we adequately covered now? Could a station be moved? Could a station be eliminated? Is there a need for additional stations? They also did a statistical analysis of basically our past performance, where the call volume had been over the past years and what our response times had been to those areas. They also did a community risk reduction analysis. There's a lot of information in that study about that, about which areas of the city are at particular risk, and how the station location plays into that. They also did a review of our last ISO survey, ISO Insurance Services Office. They come in, they try to be on a 5-year schedule. We were last surveyed in 2018, and we were reduced our rating from a 3 down to a 2, which was really good. Just to refresh you on that rating's from a 1 to 10, with 1 being the very best you can be to 10 being the worst. So really the core purpose of this study was just to evaluate our overall service delivery that we're providing today, and determine if any stations should be relocated, or any could be eliminated, or if any need to be added. So the way they did this, and we do have a map up here on the screen of our current station locations. You may or may not be able to see my cursor. There it is. Okay. So just to reorient you, we currently have 5 stations in the city. Station 1 is right here at City Hall on the bottom floor of this building. Built in 1974. As the city grew, then Station 2 was the next station, down on 74. Boy, it's hard for me to even see that. Station 1 is right here at City Hall. Station 2 is as the city grew down on 74 down at Sutherland Avenue. That building was built in 1968. Then in 83, we added Fire Station 3, which is up near the Aquatic Center. Then in 2001, 2002, we added the temporary station up at Station 4, which was later built into a permanent facility that opened back in 2017. And then Station 5 up on 601 North near the expressway that opened in 2003. So the process that they used in looking at this to determine what the needs were and if any of these stations could be moved or whatever, there's a process that they'll select what they call anchor stations. And this is actually a very similar study that they did for the city of Chapel Hill a couple of years ago. But they'll select anchor stations that we don't feel like feasibly could be moved. And in our case, and in working with them and talking through this, in our case, those two anchor stations were Station 4 and Station 5. You know, if you think about it, Station 4, the newest facility we have, again, was opened about 5 years ago. So they're at the airport area. And in that station, we actually hired a consulting firm back then too. If you remember, the ones that were on the council back in 2008, 2009, in that time frame, we hired the Institute of Government, who was out of UNC Charlotte, to come in and do a study. And because we wanted to make sure then we were putting that Station 4 at the right place. So the results of that study came back and verified and said, yes, that station needs to go. They're at the airport, which was, we had property there already. There was also a big part of that decision was the desire by council and really all of us to better serve that airport. So that decision was made to put that station there. So with that station being so new, certainly we wouldn't want to move that. And again, it was verified the location was where it needs to be. The other one is Station 5, which really is, again, we bought that building as an existing, that initially was the Unionville Fire Department, the Crestview subdivision. You may recall when we annexed that property up there, 601 North and 200 North in 99. Unionville wanted to move out of the city and build another station. We needed a station, and it was just the right location for us. So we actually purchased that building and added onto it and renovated it. So again, because of the location of it, proximity to the, obviously 601 with access back into downtown, proximity to Highway 74, to the expressway, we didn't feel like that station should be moved. Now, with that said, the other three stations, we told them, you know, we're fair game to move, and that being Station 1 here at City Hall, Station 2 down on 74 East, and Station 3 up at the Aquatic Center. And the rationale behind that, these are the three oldest stations, and as you know, we do have a long-range plan to rebuild Station 1 across the street here. So we felt if that was a possibility of rebuilding this station, again, we wanted to make sure we were putting it back in the right place. With Station 2, again, built in the late 60s, a 50-plus-year-old building, there's a lot of needs there, and with the size of that lot that station's on, there's really not room for expansion. And then Station 3, we had a lot of discussion about Station 3, and Station 3 was built during the public safety era when the city, when we're doing public safety. And really it was built as a public safety station, was really never designed as a 24-hour fire station. We've done renovations to it over the years since then to, to make do. But we also told them that that one was an option that could be moved if need be. The other thing we asked them to do regarding Station 3, we had, we had put a lot of thought and planning into could Station 3 be relocated instead of adding Station 6? That's something we had done locally with our city GIS department. That was a question that we were asked, and we really looked at that, and we could not see, internally, we could not see a way to do that, to move or eliminate that station without it creating a service gap in that area where it's at. So we asked the consultant to look at that and just see if there was anything that we could do in either eliminating or moving that station to better serve the city. Their findings were really the same thing, and that's outlined in the report. I mean, they looked at different options about, moving it here, moving it there, eliminating it, and they just could not come up with a way to do that, and again, not create that service gap in that area. So with all that said, their recommendation was to leave the Station 3 needed to stay in service, and that was the best location for it. So it was actually their decision then to really anchor that station where it's at now. Now that does present something we'll have to look at in the future. Again, there are a lot of needs there, so we'll just have to. Again, we didn't want to start putting money into it until we knew for sure that it was where it needed to be long into the future. One thing I didn't say when I started this, our goal here is to make sure that we're planning for the future. That we know that we're adequately serving our citizens today, but we're also planning for the future. One of the things that the company used, that the consultant used, is called and they talk about in the report of VRI, which stands for Vulnerability Risk Index. And they look at a variety of different factors to determine what that VRI score is. And again, that's talked about a lot in the report. But they look at things like population, population density, call density. They look at the risk analysis. They look at a hazard analysis. So there's various factors that they look at in determining that score. So really what you get is a very modern approach to fire station location recommendations. It factors in really everything that should be factored in and determine where those stations should be. So with all that in mind, let me just talk about the key recommendations that they made. First and foremost, Station 6, they said yes, absolutely. There does need to be a station added up in that northwest area, which is already the direction that we're going in. But I think what this does is just reiterates that we're making the right decision, that we're doing what's best or what's right for our citizens. And that VRI index, the score, by adding just that station was a tremendous improvement. When they looked at two things. One, they looked at just the city limits, what's currently in the city limits. And they also looked at the total study area was the current city limits plus other areas that are projected to be developed in the future. They looked at the city's land use plan and, what that future development was going to look at or look like. So that VRI score, when they looked at the total area, it increased from 40 to 55%, which was a significant increase. When we looked at just in the city limits, it was even higher. It went from what's currently at 52% to 90%. So I think that just on that, we can all rest assured that we're doing the right thing by adding that station. And I know there are things, as you're aware, that are already in place for that. We do have the funding that was allocated in last year's budget. We have hired an architect. We've started that very preliminary design process. We've applied for the SAFER grant. When we applied for that grant back in the spring, this is a little bit of a side note, but it's something that's relevant. When we applied for that SAFER grant back in the spring, the goal from FEMA was to have all those grants awarded by the end of September. A couple of things happened there. There was some additional money that went into that grant program, which was good. And they have not awarded all those grants yet. It ended up that there was about, I believe, approximately $560 million in that program. They have awarded, to this point, I believe about $360 million of that. So there's still another $200 million that they have not awarded yet. And their new goal is that they'll have that awarded by the end of this month. So we're still hoping that we'll get an award through that grant. There's still a possibility that may happen. As far as the Station 6 location, as you all know, we do have property, their own secret shortcut that the city owns. It's between Willis Long Road and Rocky River Road. When the group did the study, they came back with the ideal location, the optimum location as they called it, was at Rocky River and Myers Road. And that's the intersection of Myers closest to Secret Shortcut. So they came back that was the optimum location, again, Rocky River and Myers Road. Now we did ask them to evaluate the site that the city owns, and they do feel like that is an acceptable location. And all those factors considered, the VRI score that we talked about earlier, I think it only changed like 1% going from the optimal location to the area where we currently own. The way they do that, they place hexagons, and basically anything that's in that hexagon they feel like is an acceptable location. So as far as some other recommendations, again, they did strongly recommend to leave 3 in the area where it is, not to do anything with it, to leave Station 4 and 5 in place where they are, no moves for them, to leave Station 1 in basically the area that it is now, and again, if we are able to move ahead with that long-range plan of rebuilding it, then this area would be the appropriate place for that. I do want to show you our next slide here. So let me talk a minute about what their locations were for future stations. I don't want you to get nervous, because I'm not going to be asking for these future stations in this year's budget. These are the next 2 we're going to talk about, Station 7 and 8, are future. It's really hard for me to give you a definite timeline on that. But again, I think it's something that we need to be planning for in the future. Whether it's 5 years, whether it's 10 years, whatever that is, based on the development, how the development goes. But their recommendations were, of course, you see here is Station 6, and this would be, again, we would divide these districts up so that then basically anything north of Highway 74 would go to Station 6. Anything south would be covered by Station 4. They
That
also
currently is sending some of 4 off to 6, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
We would take some of Station 4 what they're currently doing and add it to 6.
Just a question. Yeah.
And that does improve. You know, the key reason that Station 6 is needed is this area, you know, up in that Glendalough area, the Union Indian Trail, Poplar Road area. So up in here, but however, by adding it, it does also improve the response time to this area. So they recommended, again, strongly to move ahead with Station 6. Their next recommendation, again, this is for future planning, is to add a Station 7 out in the area of Morgan Mill Road and Olive Branch Road. Kind of in that, but, you know, there's kind of a triangle there, Morgan Mill, Olive Branch, Cyrus Edwards, they're near where Lee Park is, right next to the expressway. So their recommendation is a future station, Station 7, and in conjunction with that, to relocate Station 2 from where it is currently, there at Sutherland, to further down 74 East. 74 just east of Hilltop. Then what that does, of course, you can see this area, you know, anytime you see these long fingers, I mean, that equates to longer response times. So what that does, and as this area, you know, as this area fills in, develops, having this station up in this area is going to help with improve those response times. We currently have a service gap up in the up on 200 North, the Village Lake community, up off Village Lake Drive, you know, out on the lake. It's not as bad as the one up in the Glendalough area. The response times are not as long. However, there is a service gap that's there that we need to keep our eye on and moving ahead. And again, as development continues to occur up there, we'll just need to be focusing on that and making that decision of when we need to do something further with Station 7. Again, and then with that in conjunction, move Station 2 from where it is down further 74 to 74 East, in which that just gives a better coverage for this area in the Station 2 area. They also projected that the next one, which this would be in order, certainly I see Station 7 needed prior to 8. Now again, I can't give you a time frame on that, but it's something that we just need to be planning for in the future. Station 8 would be in the Rocky River Road and Highway 84 area. Because again, you know, you think about the future growth of the city as this area fills in and then fills back in, you know, over here. And again, all this is based on the, you know, future land use plans of what's predicted to be. So with all that said, their recommendation, and certainly would be my recommendation, that, you know, as conditions allow, that we identify property in this area, in this area, and this area, and then as we can, go ahead and purchase that property before it starts getting more developed in those areas. And then, you know, if however long we keep it until we actually use it, you know, we don't know, but I think it's just good planning. It's good planning on long-range planning, you know, again, not short-term, but good long-range planning for us as a city. So those are the station recommendations. One thing that's interesting too, I mentioned earlier, we had a study conducted back in 2009, the Urban Institute that did that study. Really, their recommendation in 2009, and again, it was for future, what they were saying future, they recommended, again, putting Station, putting Station 4 there where we put it, But they also identified the need that down the road, there'd be a need for a station up in the Secret Shortcut Rocky River Road area. They also identified it's really very, very close to the same areas that both of them recommended, which to me just validates really both studies. Now, this study was much more in-depth than the one we did in 2009, but they still are very similar recommendations. The one from '09 also, a little bit different location, but it also identified the need for adding another station down in the, that Station 2 area in the future. So, that's the overview or the gist of the station recommendations. There were a couple other recommendations in the study. As I mentioned, they did a review of our ISO, our last ISO grading, and they felt like that we had really gained all the points that were pretty much available to us at that point. The two significant areas of point gain from where we are with the ISO rating are staffing and deployment. So the additional, adding Station 6 will help that, because that hole that was up there in the last survey will be hopefully covered in the next survey. So that'll make a difference. And so anyway, that was their evaluation, their analysis of our last study. That those were the, we as a city did really good in gaining points from the last one, but that's where the big points are still out there that could move us from that to a 1. They also had a recommendation to pursue signal preemption systems, and those are basically they're devices that you have on the traffic lights, and also a device on the emergency apparatus. Doesn't have to just be fire; it can be fire, police, EMS. And basically, what it does, those preemption devices will, as you're approaching it, running emergency traffic, they'll cause that traffic light to cycle and to go green in your direction. That's something we actually pursued that several years ago now, and but we didn't move ahead with it. Of course, that's something that would take coordination with NCDOT, because obviously it's something that they would have to be on board with, and adding those to their traffic lights. So what it does, it just makes a quicker, safer response. And you think about it, if you're going down 74 and you've got that on the apparatus, as you're approaching it from however many thousand feet back, then it causes that light, to go through its normal cycle, from green to yellow to red for that opposing traffic, and it gives the emergency apparatus the green light. And so that's something that I think would benefit us to look at in the future. And again, that would take that coordination with NCDOT. So again, there's a lot of information in the report, and again, I don't, time just doesn't permit to talk about all of it, but I will be happy to answer any questions. I'm not coming with any recommendations today. This is just for your benefit, and again, all part of that strategic long-range planning. We did present this to the Public Safety Committee back in August, but we did want to bring it and present it to this council. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
I just have two. One, is there anything you can find out about the safer grants at all? Is there rumor, innuendo? Is there a breeze blowing that you might could read, a sign?
No, I wish there was. No, I wish there was. That's a pretty well kept process, because it is very objective. It's
Well, we would hope that it would be. I was just wondering if there's any way we could influence it.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay,
Already asked.
I understand that.
okay, all right. Second question. Is there not anything that, 4 was the one that was most recently done? Quite frankly, I thought it was too much at the time. And I can't imagine that today, that site, that plan would not be something that could be modeled after. And could we not save some money in the architectural area and create something similar? Hopefully, again, to save the city some money.
We'll be glad to, and again, we have contracted with an architect. We'll be glad to,
Is that the same architect?
it is a different architect.
Yeah.
How
Right.
that would work.
Yeah.
One thing we have to keep in mind, some of the things would be the same, but there have been changes made over these last 5 or 6 years in, the standards for fire stations, particularly around decontamination of fire gear and that type of thing, because of the knowledge that cancer is a factor for firefighters. So there's a lot of things changed in the decon and how that's all worked as firefighters come back from a call. Areas where they leave their gear, and then dirty areas, clean areas, those type of things. So there has been a lot of changes made in the standards since then. But it's a great idea. Any other questions that I might could answer? Well, again, thank you for allowing me to share this with you. And again, I think the key takeaways are that we can be confident that we're doing the right thing with Station 6. And I think this gives us a really good planning tool as we move forward into the future. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, at this time, we will take a recess and reconvene at 6 o'clock.
I would have thought that was higher.
What is it?
Monroe.